Before we delve into your artistic practice, I would like to ask you, August 2nd, Timea just mentioned the European Commemoration Day for the Holocaust of the Roma and Sinti. How do you normally, or how do you spend this day?
In my family, we don't speak a lot about that history. It's a kind of taboo. So there's no commemoration, unfortunately. So this is why doing this today is really important, because I put this back in my kind of family intimacy. So this is important,
Yeah, I would say like completely the same. It's not something that we commemorate. I think it's maybe the newer generation that tries to kind of shed a light on our ancestors and on our ancestors' history. So I think every day in my practice, or maybe I speak for all of us, we try to commemorate our ancestors' life and the one that passed during the Holocaust, for sure.
In my family, and in general in Hungary, there is not much talk about the Roma Holocaust. As I grew up in an assimilated Roma family, I can still remember the day when I realized that I'm of Roma heritage. And in my family, it's mainly me and my siblings who hold it very important things. It's very important to remember these historic events and to talk more about them. So there's a generational change going on.
You all talked about silence, and that's also, it seems paradoxical, but I want to start the conversation with silence, and I really mean it literally, silence. I would like to invite you, silence is crucial for traumatic memory, and there's this silence that is the good silence, commemoration, meditation, concentration, but also the silence that is nourished by pain and that covers things up, which is not healthy. And since there's so much silence in Roma and Sinti families, I would like to invite you to just sit with the silence for just 1 minute.
Silence is, as we said, is a very big thing in my families, in our families. When my grandfather was about to pass away, he started writing a book. He was like, this is a time for me to share my stories and my stories of the camp, being a prisoner of the Nazis. But when he passed, my grandma burned the book, and I never had a chance to read it, or no one in my family. And it's also her way of, you don't want this painful memory to still stay on this earth with us. So it had to go with him. So that's a big part of our silence in our family, but also there's the bad silence, as you mentioned, a kind of bottled up silence that creates a lot of pain. And she's still alive today. She's 91. And she still has this big pain of talking about what happened. And it became a physical, but also a mental struggle for her. And this is when it becomes interesting to look at how this trauma is also passed down from generation to generation. And I'm super interested in the idea of epigenetics. So how can a trauma can be passed down from a generation? And that's something that is actually, there's a lot of example of victims of the work that feel that, and how relevant the Holocaust is still to this day. for Roma and Sinti people. This is something that I think I should really share. And maybe it's going against what she wants, but I do think that is so important to give her the voice today of telling these stories before they get lost. I found this postcard with a farm, and on the back of which she wrote, "This farm used to give me and my cousin a slice of bread during World War II." And from that postcard, I had no kind of information of where it was. I just saw this one church, so that's how I contacted boroughs and counties in Belgium, and that's how we located the farm. And then my dad and my brother went over there, and they met with the farmer's son who hit my grandma, and they had a very beautiful conversation. So this is kind of how it kind of shows not only the solidarity of the farmers with our communities, but also how years later we can still kind of heal a bit from it and meet people that are like real life heroes, really.
Yeah. Charly, we just learned from your performance that there's a lack of commemoration in your family as well. How was it? You just said by chance you ended up in what was the name? Montreuil. This made something with you. Was that the initial moment where you break the silence talking about the Holocaust?
I think, yeah. I think my parents, like I said, didn't get us into a place of commemoration. And I didn't know it was something that was missing until I get to Montreuil. And I learned more about the World War II and how people have been suffering of it. So yeah, and also my people are nomadic, so we are traveling a lot, and I think that's maybe the difference that we don't keep stuff with us, and I think this is maybe the same with the memory and with the transmission of culture and history. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, because there's no transmission at all. But when I said that I was doing this exhibition for this commemoration, my parents were like, "Oh, okay." And so I felt that something changed, and they saw the importance of it.
Your work is also research based. You struggle a lot with your identity. You speak up. How was the reaction of your family that you break the silence? And how do you do the research of your family story?
Art and photography was sort of a tool for me to bring this topic up in my family. And through the pictures, through the photographs, we create the remembrance together and we create the artwork as itself. My family helped me with my photography and with my art, and this really brought us together, and it also created an understanding for them bit by bit, and they understood more through helping me with my photography and talking about the photographs together, and it became easier for us within the family to talk about these topics. And through this method of working together, I also I learned stories from my parents and from my family that I didn't know. And through these stories, I also learn and I'm able to observe my own reactions and learn from them.
That's interesting. So that your artistic practice is not only a way for you finding your identity and your family stories, which implies, I guess, a certain healing, but also for your ancestors. And in the sense of healing, when you understand healing in the sense of making things whole, again, you put in the missing pieces through your artistic practice. You mentioned 4 aspects of your personality. Can you elaborate a bit on these 4 aspects?
When I was thinking about the aspects, that I could also make decisions in everyday life, I found these aspects that experience them in everyday life as well. Own aspects, not just from the outside characteristics that people might see in me, because I'm a lot more than just woman and of Roma origin when we take these aspects, and I try to express these within, and not just from what others see from outside in me. And I think it's very important to emphasize that I don't have to choose any of these aspects. They're all important to me, and they all enrich me, and they're all part of me.
Places as sites of memory, places with a spirit, places that witnessed. Maybe you're all familiar with the series of the artist, the Romani artist Valérie Leray, places with no names, in which she's a photographer. She traced sites where concentration camps or internments from Sinti and Roma were, and these photographs are beautiful and completely innocent. You see meadows, forests, sometimes houses, but still these sites are speaking. So what role plays sites and places for you personally and for your work? Maybe you should first.
Well, it's very personal. I don't think this is that much important because in my culture, like I said, we are nomadic. And this place doesn't matter that much. Of course, we need somewhere to commemorate, and that's important. But yeah, I would say that I took this piece of metal, and maybe it's not places that really keep me with the history, but maybe more to the matter. As we can see with the cement here. I feel like the matter is really speaking a lot. That's why I don't work that much and just put it there like this. And sometimes I'm doing nothing with the picture, like the picture at the entry of the ERIAC. And I would say the history and the commemoration should be more about talking, because this way we can see what happened there. There's not talking about it, and I think this is the main goal now. Is talking about it between generation and outside of the community.
Because everywhere in all your work, I see these objects, and I see a lot of violence as well. Also, maybe a few words to the work behind this little wall. It's an original photo. Maybe you can tell us a bit about it.
This is a picture of my grandmother with her family in front of the caravan, the familial caravan. It's from the 15th, I would say, and she gave it to me. And it's the original. And this is a very fragile picture. So when it's showing directly on the sunlight, at a moment or another, she will disappear, and we'll only have the piece of paper. And so, like I say, I'm doing nothing. I'm just letting the time show that memory and culture sometimes doesn't feel between generations.
I have one quote I really liked. You said, I strive to perpetuate the primary purpose of my community to inhabit dead places. And that resonates with what you just said, that I'm not interested in places. I'm
because we are living in any way. So.
Yeah.
I love Pierre Noir's writing about collective memory. And in his writing, he explains about the difference between lieu and milieu. So collective memory being influenced by your peers at school or by people around you. And then you have lieu, which is the places, but also objects and how they contain memory. And so for me, it's very difficult to trace her and my grandfather's kind of places, because I can't remember if I mentioned afterwards, but after the war, because of so many losses during the Holocaust, my grandparents were forced to settle down in Belgium. So, and then that's when the big silence happened. And it is, as you say, like, yeah, it's so great to reconnect with the people that helped her. But for me, her essence and my grandfather's essence really live in these hay materials, both because of my grandmother's experience hiding in farms, and so that's why I wanted the kind of hay bale to be like hugged by this ratchet strap and really having this protection from it. And then the second part, which is my grandfather's story of the Holocaust, he was a bit older. He was in his 20s, and when he was making guns for the Nazi, they would put them in crates, and in the crate put some hay. Hay was also used in the camp to keep warm. So for me, this is how their memory kind of is alive, and that's why I chose for the piece with the fire to recreate the caravan out of hay. So that's, for me, that's my lieu, according to Pierre Lorat's kind of theory of collective memory.
Yeah. So material as like archives of memory.
Yeah.
And place where memory is archived is the body. Yeah. And this also plays a role for the three of you and your artistic work. Anita, in your whole world, you put your body in the center. What was the decision behind you, or when did you take this decision? My first question. The second, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect your body when exposing it in performances and in your artwork?
As I said before, as I mentioned before, the four aspects, these are very sensitive aspects in my life. When I was creating my body print works there on that wall, I was trying to look for the most sensitive parts on my body and try to express sensitivity through the prints that come from my body. So I painted my body and I rolled on the surface of a textile. When I was doing this rolling, the paint has different layers, and the first layer is the outer layer, which is like a superficial layer. Only that layer came off, a layer of paint came off from my body, and that symbolizes for me also the surface, let's say, negative experiences in everyday life regarding racism and whatever a Hungarian Roma woman has to endure in everyday life as part of everyday racism. But again, it's important that only the surface came off, and there are more layers under that remaining on the body. The paint dries, the remaining paint dries on my body. It creates a certain amount of pain and tension on the body that reminds me other pain as well. I also have a video artwork where I try to wash this paint down, and you can see that when one surface gets clean or the paint is removed, it comes from other parts, the paint comes back to that part. So it doesn't come off with only one rubbing or one washing, and after that it's really painful for the skin and it remains red and painful for a longer time.
A környező területektől újra és újra festékes lesz, és újra dörzsölnöm kell.
So this is then also a way of getting rid of all these negativity and all this violence you're sometimes exposed to. As far as I understood, right? Still remaining the questions, what do you do to heal after these processes? How do you protect your soul?
People think that I get too vulnerable by exposing my body like this in my art. But for me, it's not just about me. I think in a broader context, it's also about the pain and healing from others and not just myself.
Yeah. that resonates with you, Charly.
Yeah.
I think you said, you wrote, putting my own body at risk is important to me. It allows me to physically feel my speech.
Yeah.
So you also put yourself in danger or
Yeah.
feel the pain.
It's also very something about my history, my personal history. I stopped school when I was 11 to help my parents working on travel, and it was kind of hard. And it was in the cold, and we were working, we were child, you know. And so sometimes it's just to recreate this, to commemorate, and also to show to people how hard it can be the traveling life.
And is this for you also kind of healing, or do you need some, I don't know, something to recover?
Well, it's not really healing in a way. I'm just reactivating those painful situations. The only thing I can find that can be healing is the fact that I spoke about it, and this is the only thing that I can.
I read before from Marianne Hirsch. She's a Romanian-American scholar at Columbia University, and she coined this term of post-memory. And I just read it to you how she describes it very briefly. Post-memory describes the relationship that the generation after bears to the personal and collective trauma of those who came before, to experience they remember only by means of the stories, images, and behaviors among which they grew up. Post-memory's connection to the past is thus actually mediated not by recall, but by imaginative investment, projection, and creation, which I find very interesting because this is what artists do, right? To grow up with overwhelming inherited memories, to be dominated by narratives that preceded one's birth or one's consciousness, is to risk having one's own life stories displaced, even evacuated by our ancestors.
I think to me, it has done nothing but bring my family together. What we can create from something that is very painful or very hard for my grandparents to talk. And so to me, I think it's a symbol of love. I think I do everything within this idea. When I was writing my thesis, one of the questions was, why do you do that? Why do you write this? Why is this subject so important to you? And I sat down and I first was like, well, I think it's really important for people to know about our history and to educate. But then I kind of scrubbed that and I was like, actually it's just because I'm doing this because it's for the people that I love the most and for the people that I respect the most for what they endure and for their bravery and for the way they kept on going, even though they had experiences so traumatic that one can imagine. So yeah.
I would say the same. It's a lot of love in it and taking care of each other. Yeah.
So what are those strategies, surviving strategies that people are expressing in these stories? And I also contemplate a lot about how I'm going to bring this further and transfer these strategies for others as well.
I love that this conversation started with silence and ended up with love and surviving strategies. That's nice. That's good. Let's hope.